And we're live. And with me, I have again Agents of Doubts.
Mhm.
Let's see. How would you describe your personality?
Um, Skeptic to a fault. Um, I believe that if you are a skeptic um, in most ways, that you're not going to make friends that well. I would say that a lot of my coworkers think that I'm very quirky, um, and yeah, I just feel like some of the skepticism that I see in others that call themselves skeptics, it's a nicer thing where they get together and they're able to form groups around things. But I feel like Pyrrhic skeptic who wasn't a part of the community when I was getting all of my views about the world, and then when I found the community on YouTube, um, I've felt like a bit of an outsider the entire time I've been on it, and I felt like I see a lot of cliques in the world, and I've given up on trying to join them. I've given up on trying to be part of a clique. Um, I like individual people.
All right. Um, have you ever been a feminist?
I would say yes, in the sense of the first and second wave feminism, and I would say that there's many ideas that you could put forth from the third wave feminists that if they just willed it down to a simple little thing to vote on, I might be in their corner voting the same way as them. I find that a lot of the fringe ideas that they have, they're not well thought out. They're a little absurd, and they don't do any service to the first and second wave of feminism. They really hurt the image of feminism, and the only reason why they get popular is because they're shocking. You know, I feel like there are things that we can still do to help every minority or every oppressed group get better in the world and have more equal rights. And even the equality of outcome, which has nothing to do with the way that people put in the work to get that equality, to get that status. I feel like there's things that we can do to even playing fields for people that a lot of people would be on board with if it weren't for the absurd notions that come out of third wave feminist think tanks nowadays and third wave social justice warrior think tanks. Um, I feel like the internet itself is a very playing field leveling thing. You don't have to pay much into it, and it is like the best library in the world. It connects people in a different way. It helps people. You can make a long distance phone call for almost for free nowadays using Facebook or Skype. I feel like these are benefits that are helping poor people who didn't pay into the construction of this technology, you know, but it's something that we can just provide for people. And it just makes lives better across the board. And I love anything that does that. I just hate when uh, the idea that I'm looking at is a way for one group to be priority or status over another one at the cost of the other one. You know, so those are the ideas that I don't agree with in what I see in feminism as it's popularized today.
Do you also feel as though colleges and academia have created and popularized um, third wave feminism.
Yes, and even when I was finishing my undergrad degree, to a large extent, I was oblivious to it. I just figured that it was liberalism. You know, I had no idea about the nuance. You know, I feel like YouTube has actually given me a better education on that subject than going to college ever could have. Even if that was my major, YouTube has given me a better education on uh, social justice than somebody who gets a degree in social justice would have. Um, when I was in college, I remember having instructors that would completely ignore the curriculum that we were supposed to be learning and put forth their own agenda. I remember in particular having a class on the poetry of Walt Whitman and Allen Ginsberg, and never hearing any of their poetry in that class, and instead being subjected to a Beatles song about peace, Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday, uh, the way that the CIA had planted Pinochet as a dictator, and how we're all responsible for that as Americans, and all sorts of things that had nothing to do with the poetry of the people that we were supposed to be learning in that class, because that instructor was basically using that class as a platform to spread the social justice narrative. And I felt like that was the case in many of the classes that I had, especially Social Work 101. I took that class, and I had to learn about structures and um, things that basically made me cringe just for being a white guy in that class, you know, and being given assignments where I had to put myself in the shoes of somebody else that uh, basically um, they were absurd scenarios that really uh, did the narrative that they were trying to push rather than the actuality of people's lives. Being told to go stand in a corner and imagine that I was a minority person who had no public, who had no personal transportation and had to rely on public transportation, and I needed this, and this service to give me something so that I could live, but I could only make it to two of them because of the bus schedule not making it there. And that was supposed to enlighten me to the fact that we needed more public transportation that ran more frequently. Um, but really, it just made me think, well, that the only thing that could have put me in that position was different life choices. And it really highlighted entitlement to me, and why there is this huge division between the haves and the have-nots on the entitlement issue, and even those people who don't have, but they have hopes to be a have one day. They don't like entitlement, and um, yeah, I could see it back then, but I had no overarching framework to call it something. And now that there are dozens of YouTubers that are uh, just rallying against social justice daily, I've seen enough examples of things that really helped me to make sense of all of the things that I experienced while I went through college, um, and some of the friendships that I've lost along the way. One in particular that stands out to me is a user who now calls herself Skizix Chaco. And I visited her for a day on a road trip where I was visiting other YouTubers. And she used to go by the name Rogi Riverstone. Her channel is R Riverstone 1. And she made a video that was basically telling me that because later in my road trip, a bag of cookies that she baked for me was slapped out of my hand, and I didn't do anything about it on camera. I was no longer her friend, and that I was then spitting on all of the hardships that she had in her life, and that I was uh, basically rubbing salt in the wound of her being so poor that she had to pull her own teeth, and that she didn't have a very luxurious lifestyle and whatnot. And she just went on this litany of things that, were wrong about her own life that I had just offended her on. And this video is still up to this day. It's entitled "To Agent of Doubt," and it 3 years ago I had no framework to be able to realize what was going on in her head, right? But it was actually partly the social justice warrior mindset that she had been educated in and I had not. And a little bit later on her channel, 3 years ago, she made a video, and it was "Don't call me an atheist anymore," right? And she was renouncing the title atheist. She said that she was going to call herself a secular humanist from now on because atheism had been infected with misogyny and racism and whatnot. And I had no idea what she was talking about. I thought she had just gone off the deep end. And 3 years later, looking back at that video, I'm like, oh my goodness. This is a perfect example of how I had a whole bunch of friends when the argument on YouTube was just atheism versus theism. And I had a circle of friends that I built. And then when the battle lines got redrawn, it was now social justice versus shitlords. And I didn't realize it while it was happening. And that caused a lot of strife for me on YouTube, in friendships, online. I lost so many friends and didn't even know why. And the reason why was because the intersectionality of social justice means that if you are found to be wrong in any one area to their standards, wrong and not towing the line, you will be ostracized. You'll be called problematic at first, but if you keep it up, you're not going to be welcome anymore because you have a differing opinion. And I was always open to different opinions. And that's one of the worst things you can do around a social justice warrior is be open to the other narrative, to even listening to it. They're all about deplatforming the other narrative and never even giving it a chance to speak.
This reminds me of a video that Steve Shives made. Sargon posted it on his YouTube channel about how Steve Shives says something like, if you have a view that I don't agree with, then I can't be friends with you anymore. Something like that. Okay, next question.
Yeah. Next question.
Would you describe yourself as an anti-feminist?
In the sense of I'm against the egregious nature of social justice when it stands against free speech. Yes, I'm anti extending safe space laws to the rest of the internet. If you've got a rule that you can't say certain things in your safe space, that's okay. That's your safe space. But trying to extend that rule to the rest of the internet, I am very much against. And those people that call themselves feminists and call themselves social justice warriors and wear those badges as if they're honorable, they would probably consider me an anti-feminist just for having the pro-free speech views that I do. But at the same time, if they were to whittle their ideas down to something that people can get behind and would actually make a difference for women, it that was positive, and it were to show up on a ballot, I'd be voting for it. You know, but they of late, all I see is the fringe ideas that are very strange that get debunked all the time. You know,
Okay. Why are you an anti-feminist?
why? Because I am an advocate for free speech first and foremost, and I take a very absolutist position on that. And a lot of feminists want to ban hate speech, and they work actively to get themselves put in positions of authority, like professorships or the Twitter Trust and Safety Council, or any sort of HR position in a company, where they will have influence in being able to decide, well, this person's offensive speech is okay, but this person's offensive speech means that they have to be fired or deplatformed or censored. And I am more of a free speech absolutist. I think that everything should be able to be said. You know, the limits that I would put on that are very few and far between.
Well, feminists do know how to be Machiavellian. They, they really do know how to play the game, know how to get into positions of power to have the most influence as possible.
Absolutely.
Why did you start a YouTube channel, or what's inspired you to make the videos?
Okay, well, that's a very long story. My first YouTube channel was not Agent of Doubt. And my first YouTube channel was Road to Hell Music. And it was just a bunch of 80s and 90s music videos that I had on my hard drive. I uploaded them. And before YouTube had been bought by Google, and before they decided to go with just putting ad revenue on your videos, with content claims, you would get basically terminated for copyright infringement. And for about a year and a half, in 2005, 2006, I had some videos of the rock bands Poison, Rat, Def Leppard, Cinderella, some really cheesy bands, okay? Glam rock. I just happened to have those videos, and I uploaded them to my YouTube channel. And I had created my YouTube channel with my email address that I had with my employer at the time, which was General Electric. And in that company, your boss is able to read your emails. And the day that I got the termination notice and all of the DMCA notices that the copyright claims that had come in that had terminated the channel, I flipped out because I was afraid that my boss was going to see all of those legalese emails. A decade later, it wouldn't scare me one bit. But at the time, that was a very scary thing for me. And so I went home and I created a new YouTube channel just to be able to use YouTube anymore, because my channel had been terminated. And that one is still in existence, and it dates back to 2007. And I was using it not as part of the larger community that I'm part of now. Originally, my first real video that I put up, that I created, that was my content, was actually a tribute to my late sister, who died in 2008. And then 2 months later, my cousin Verby died, also of cancer. And so I did a tribute video for him. And these were very popular in my family. And then I just started moving videos that I had put on MySpace to that YouTube channel, and then putting film of Christmas with my family and stuff like that. And that was how I got my start as a YouTuber, was really the death of my sister. And I made a couple videos about certain topics where I had no idea about the larger YouTube community of atheists. And a friend of mine, his name is Alan, but his YouTube channel was the Doctor Who Nerd. He said we should make a channel together and start debunking paranormal things. And that channel was Casper's Tube. Casper was an acronym that he created, like Committee for the Paranormal Research or something. But he suffered from a sort of depression where every so often in his life, about every year, on like in February, it seems, every year he gets very self-destructive. And he decided to YouTube aside that channel and just kill it. And all the content that we had on it debunking different things. And in that time, I had, become aware of the atheist community, and we had a very small place in it. And I decided that I didn't want the videos that I was going to make to be part of the atheist community to be on the channel that I created in 2007 that had all of my family's videos on it. Because I didn't want somebody in my family that's very religious to see, a tribute video for my sister and then see, by the way, heaven doesn't exist. I felt like that was not appropriate, and I wanted to have a different platform. So I started the Agent of Doubt channel. My system for choosing the name Agent of Doubt, the first thing that I wanted in that was I wanted a name that started with an A, just like you see AAA or AA Auto in a phone book. You see all these companies that try to use the AA to get ahead of the alphabet. I just knew that I wanted a name that started with an A, and I thought about it for a long time. I had some multiplayer video game clans that had started with the name A that they had benefited from. When people were trying to choose what clan to join, they would just go down a list. It was alphabetized. So I just thought about what it was that I wanted to talk about, and the earliest memory I had of being an atheist was being in an Assembly of God church and having people tell me that it was wrong to question God and it was wrong to have doubts. And I was actually, of the mindset that it's okay to have doubts, like those are natural. And those are things that everyone has, and it's wrong to tell people that they shouldn't doubt things, because then they'll just be pansies who, they'll get taken advantage of by every charlatan who wants to sell them anything. And that's how I came up with the name Agent of Doubt. And I started making videos, and it took me 6 months to get 100 subscribers because I struck after the iron was hot. I started this channel in 2010, and pretty much everyone who was going to be popular and famous had already made a channel by then. And so I was just adding to the conversation and, feeding into the machine that makes them popular. 5 years to get to 3,000 subscribers, and then in the 6th year I doubled that. and I keep growing. And I really feel like if you put your nose to the grindstone, even if you get to the points that I was at where I had more videos than subscribers, if you keep at it, you can still succeed in this, even though the deck is stacked against you.
What inspired you to make anti-feminist YouTube videos?
Um, all of my anti-feminist YouTube videos started with free speech issues, because that's the thing that um, really bugs me at my core, when people are trying to censor others and they don't realize that it is censorship that could be turned right back on them. You know, it's just very simple principles of everyone needs to be able to express themselves, or anyone could lose their voice. And they don't seem to get it. But the second thing that started me making videos about social justice warriors was seeing some of the abuse of the Google algorithm, and seeing the way that they stuck together in different ways than anti-feminists did. And so I made some videos about that. One of them just showed how uh, feminists and social justice warriors will give money back and forth to each other on Patreon, whereas everyone in the same clique that is anti-social justice and anti-feminist will not give money back and forth to each other openly on Patreon. You'll never see in both sets, you'll see feminists doing that, and then you won't see any feminists doing that. It's like they have an ethic that giving back and forth to each other in that way is dishonest and disingenuous, whereas the feminists say, no, it's just supporting each other. Of course we do it, but the anti-feminists seem to think, oh, well, if we're artificially inflating each other's numbers by giving each other the same amount back and forth, then that's wrong. So I found that to be very interesting as a psychological thing, so I started making videos about it. And some of those SJW types were very angry at me and left me very lengthy, novel-length hate mails. So that's another thing that I really felt like pulled me into that drama, was seeing how there were people that I used to endorse, I used to subscribe to, and all it took was for me to point out one little thing that they were doing that I disagreed with, for them to go into a tirade and call me a conspiracy theorist and all sorts of things. Just because I pointed out something that I showed the evidence for, and they didn't like that I was investigating that. So that kind of pulled me into this battle where the battle lines have been redrawn between social justice and shitlord. And I wish there was a better word for the shitlords than anti-social justice or anti-feminist. I wish there was a better term for them that wasn't so negative, but that's what I have to use right now.
Do you consider yourself an MRA?
As an atheist, the first men's rights activist platform piece that I picked up was the intactivism. The belief that men should not have circumcision done to them as babies. To me, that fell in line with being an atheist, because I didn't see any reason for it except for being acclimated to it because of living in a world dominated by Christian society. So it seemed a really good fit for me as an atheist to adopt that platform position. But other than that, I feel like a lot of the things that men's rights activists fight for, I'm always dubious of. Um, I'm I'm dubious of the individual testimonials. And what's strange is I actually work with a community in my profession counseling people who go through a lot of the things that these MRAs are talking about. And I'm always still skeptical of each individual story because there's always two sides to every story, but I only ever hear one, right? But I do believe that it is the case in the world that women will be able to get custody of children far easier than men would after a divorce. Even if the man is the principal breadwinner, there is a bias there that is undeniable. And if the activism is just bringing attention to that fact, then I'm for it. But there are also cases where I think that I've counseled people that maybe needed to stay away from their wife or their ex-wife and kids for a while they worked on their issues, but they principally wanted to take their children back and insert themselves into that woman's life even more. Um, so I'm always very cautious about what kind of changes do we want to make in the world, as far as as far as what do we want to do to make things more equitable for the men, because there's all sorts of doors we can open that would make the world a worse place. Um, I'm very much not in favor of uh, domestic violence laws where if there's a call to the police, at least one person in that domestic violence fight has to be taken to the jail, because it's normally the man that has that happen to them. And I don't like that is connected to charges being pressed on the man, where it's basically a quota. One person makes one phone call and somebody has to be arrested as a policy thing. And that's the law was put in place to, um, ostensibly to protect women from domestic violence. But in effect, basically, it's saddling a whole bunch of men who don't really need to be living with this burden, but they're being labeled as domestic violence offenders for the rest of their lives. And that's going to be something that keeps them from getting security clearances for jobs that have nothing to do with domestic issues. If you're an electrician and you want to work at a power plant or oil refinery and you have a domestic violence charge in your history where you slammed a door and so your girlfriend called the police on you, you're not going to be able to get the security clearance to be able to work in a high security place like that anymore, because laws have been enacted that anyone who has a domestic violence charge can't do that. If you're a soldier and you have an argument that gets heated with your wife and the police get called and you get a domestic violence charge like that, you will get discharged from the army, because anyone with a domestic violence charge can't be handed weapons. They'll be barred from owning guns because there are laws in different places that basically converge to make these horrible situations. And I feel like there are many people who are being labeled and saddled with felonies and records that are going to hurt them far more than it's worth that they are.
Yes, but if somebody walked up to you and asked you, "Are you an MRA?" would your answer be yes or no?
A simple one. Um, I guess it depends on who was asking the question, because I feel like I'm an MRA and a feminist at the same time.
Oh,
So,
how are you an MRA and a feminist at the same time?
well, I'm all about making the world a better place for everyone, you know. And stereotypically, when someone says that they're an egalitarian, that the a feminist will look at an egalitarian and say, "Oh, well, you're just an MRA who doesn't want to be seen like an asshole. You're just hiding as behind that egalitarianism." And then MRA would look at somebody who claims egalitarianism and say, "Oh, well, you're just secretly a feminist, and you don't want to be seen as an asshole." But I feel like there are issues on both sides that I very much am in favor of. And every time I think MRA, I think about intactivism. But most MRAs, when you listen to them, they're talking about other issues. Um, One of my best friends is Daxton Islander, who also has the channel Psychological Cynic. He has just as many subscribers as me, and he's a MGTOW. And he's not just putting on an act. In real life, he is this way. He's forever alone, and um, I get along with him just fine. And I see some of the things that he says that he's afraid to um, enter into a societal contract with a woman like marriage, where he's at the disadvantage. And I see that, like, from his perspective, there is no good that can come from him being in a relationship with a woman that lasts beyond a few dates. He's almost a pickup artist in that respect. Everything else about society says, if you get married and get divorced, give them your wallet. Even if they didn't earn half of it, they get half of it because they were part of that unit that you made in that contract. So, yeah, he's probably never going to get married. And I understand his perspective on that. Me, I'm probably going to get married, but I see the things that he's saying, and I just accept it. But I see what he's saying.
Oh, Celtic Rune Singer said Agents is a centrist. No? You want to answer that?
On a lot of things, I'm a centrist, and I feel like most people, if they looked at two differing groups like MRAs and RadFems, or Democrats and Republicans, they wouldn't align themselves solely with either group. They would want to pick and choose from each of the issues that the group has. And I took a political compass test, and I came out a cosmotarian. It was something that was left and libertarian of center. But I feel like the labels don't really explain you as well as just talking about each issue individually. That's why I say, if somebody asked me if I was an MRA, my answer actually would depend on who they were and what they would glean from that information. You know, because I do like rights for everyone. I like rights across the board for everyone. But if somebody were to ask me if I was an atheist, that the answer to them would also depend, because I'm actually an ichtheist, and most people don't understand what that word means. most people don't understand the difference between an anti-theist, an igtheist, a maltheist, an agnostic atheist. And so if I'm talking to a Christian and they ask me if I'm an atheist, I will say yes, because that's the only way that they're going to understand. There's this giant group of non-believers, and the only word they have for that is atheist. And there's no more nuance to that they're possibly going to understand in a 1-minute conversation about it. And that's pretty much what I want to keep it to if I'm in a real life situation. I don't want to be talking about atheism in a group of Christians at, say, a picnic, or to my coworkers. So if an atheist on YouTube asks me, what would I label myself, I would tell them the actual nuanced position, because I feel like they can understand it and they will glean something from that. And part of the definition of words is the mutually understood definition, So there are certain people who I wouldn't say that I'm an MRA to, because the only thing that they would understand from that is anti-feminist asshole. And if that's what they would get from that, then I wouldn't tell them that, because I don't feel like that describes my actual position.
Is there any part of MGTOW that you agree with, or have you ever looked at MGTOW and viewed it as something you could get behind?
The antisocial nature of it is something that I actually counsel people out of a lot. I feel like it's resigning yourself to the situation rather than working towards changing it. I feel like if there's unfair laws, then you address those laws rather than change your life to be antisocial. Prenuptial agreements or changes in the law of marriage where somebody's future endeavors couldn't be attached to for alimony are probably more appropriate things to seek out than just to seclude yourself from the world, and not participate in things that bring a lot of people joy. I mean, relationships do bring a lot of people joy, and marriage does too. And to just resign yourself to never being a part of that thing that everybody else finds joy in, it's kind of taking your ball and going home,
Yeah, I wonder how come nobody ever thinks to get a prenuptial agreement as opposed to resign themselves from marriage altogether. I mean,
Well,
prenups.
the problem with prenups is there's that stigma about them that it means that you don't trust the person. It means that you think that there's a possibility that you could break up. That's why you're planning for that breakup. So that's why people don't go for it. So I think that the clauses that are commonly put in prenuptial agreements should probably be applied to the contract of marriage itself, as far as the way that people get treated after a marriage. And we should probably press for more laws in that direction.
Yeah, I agree with that, because on one hand, I do think that a prenuptial agreement is a great thing, but I could see how people would interpret it as, oh, you just think that the marriage is going to fail, or you think I'm going to treat you wrong. When really, the reality is, men do have it hard during a divorce, and women, divorces generally tends to favor women. And not like that, but I think that somebody had statistics that women ask for divorce at higher rates than men ask for a divorce.
Well, I feel like my positions on it probably are very biased in the way that if I were to suffer a divorce where my pay was attached to for alimony and child support, I feel like as a privileged white man who has made a lot of good decisions in his life, I can actually afford that. I could go out and get two jobs. Like if I really hated a woman, I never wanted to see her again in my life, I might make that decision. You know what? Instead of coming home late at night or to all this bickering, I'm going to go live in my own place and take a second job because I'd rather work at a second job than come home to you. And I'll just pay you all the money from it. And in my position, I actually can get a second job. You know, I can get a second income. And, you know, it all depends on how bad that home life situation would be. But yeah, I feel like I could afford that kind of arrangement a lot easier than some people could because there are many people who are either saddled with a felony or they're part of a minority that doesn't get hired as well, that can't find jobs as easily as I can. You know, I feel like I will land on my feet no matter what. So I'm not as worried about those sorts of laws where, you know, somebody gets their pay attached for child support and alimony or whatever else happens in a divorce, because those losses are things that I feel like I could just bounce right back from, you know, and it's hard to make me care about things that won't affect me because I feel like people should make better life decisions, and I'm very much a personal responsibility type person in that respect. And so it's hard for me to really engender myself to those issues. And that's where I wouldn't be so much a MGTOW or an MRA because I don't normally care about those things.
Do you consider America to be a very feministic country? Like, is it do you think feminism heavily influenced America? No.
I think feminists have influenced other Western countries a little bit more, but yes, because I see Middle Eastern countries and I see countries where feminism never had a first or second wave. You know, um, yeah, I feel like America is pretty feminist. I feel like the level of equality that women have attained in America is on par with most other countries where women have attained equal rights. Um, I have no problem with that statement.
Oh, so you think feminism changed America for the better?
Uh, yeah, I feel like women being able to vote was a good thing. You know, suffrage for women, that's awesome. Women being able to wear pants in the business place, you know, little things like that. Women being seen as being able to do the same jobs as men, I feel like that's a good thing. Women being able to drive, you know, women being seen uh, as credible as men in a court of law. All of those things, I think, were good things that basically I feel like third wave feminism is searching for those issues that they could have such an impact on America with, you know, or whatever country they're in, and all of those things have already happened. You know, most of the great things that feminism could possibly give to women, they've already given to women. So now we're left with the fringe ideas that will sometimes seem baffling, like men shouldn't spread their legs on a city bus because man spreading is oppression. that is just absurd bullshit. You know,
Well, there's nothing stopping them except themselves from trying to help women in the Middle East, but they don't really seem to care about helping women in the Middle East. I mean, there's Christina Hoff Sommers, but the Amazing Atheist has done more to help women in the Middle East than than third wave feminists like Anita Sarkeesian, who um, they should try to call it sexist oppression, you know. They should try to spin it that way instead of um, saying it as what it really is. That's the Amazing Atheist and a bunch of other people try to donate to help women in the Middle East who really need it. And if the feminists here in the first world really want to get down in the history books for something as people who really helped women, then they could help the women in the Middle East. They could help people in all these third world countries, but they don't. Or it is the anti-feminist community that talks about how Islam negatively affects women. You know, like I hear from Vernaculus and Sargon of Akkad and Shonhead on how the Middle East, how terribly women are treated, and they're trying to bring attention to that. Whereas it is the feminists, the third wave feminists in this country, that it's like, oh, it's really no big deal. It's no big deal. That's just cultural differences. All culture, all cultures have value.
I I feel like there's a great bit of cognitive dissonance that comes up when intersectionality is in play because they have conflicting values of rights for women and not being racist against people in the Middle East and not being bigoted against another religion. So they have a hard time prioritizing what it is that they're trying to work for. And I feel like the best example of this was actually in the last season of South Park, which was all about social justice. They had a handicapped child become the editor of the school newspaper. And so people had a problem with criticizing what he was writing or even telling him, that he was doing something that they didn't like because he was handicapped. And so he was part of a protected class. And the protection of different classes sometimes overlaps to the point where it creates that cognitive dissonance where it's really important to pick a priority there. Yes, you're going to piss off a whole bunch of traditional Muslims if you want women to have the right to dress the way they want to dress, and you want women to be able to drive, and you want women to be able to vote, and you want women to be able to choose their own partners. You're going to piss off a lot of them, and you just have to pick what is your priority. Is your priority not pissing off Muslims because they have a protected class, or is your priority not pissing off women by leaving them in the same shit situation that they're in? My priority in that case would be the women.
Yeah, to me,
I'm a very anti-dogma person, and I don't like religion, so to me, it's a no-brainer.
yeah, to me, I think that anti-feminists do a better job at feminism than actual third wave feminists because they're the ones bringing up issues on how women are suffering in third world countries, while feminists ignore that.
I have seen parallels drawn between arguments that feminists and Muslim traditional or radical Muslims make as far as protecting Muslim culture and the status quo that they have where women are oppressed.
Yeah. What aspects of feminism do you see in this country? I mean, do you like to see change?
What would I like to see changed about feminism?
Yeah, what feminist aspects in this country would you like to see change?
I would say the insular nature of feminism, not wanting to work with people outside of their politic. I feel like they are the most insular, and they have the echo chamber that just when an idea finally makes it out of that echo chamber, it's of course ridiculous because nobody has criticized it. I'd like to see them be more open to criticism so that they can be constructive with that criticism and uh, adapt their plan to actually get things done. And that would be the second thing that I would want for them is to be more proactive in actually getting things done.
What do you think of the alt right?
Um, it's a new thing to me. I was added to an alt right group that had some Hitler praising in it around the time that Avalion was being a hot topic around YouTube, and I'm not sure what to think about them. I don't even know what alt right really means, other than a conservative who doesn't care about political correctness and will state absolutely what is on his mind, because that's what the Facebook groups that I was added to seem to be, anti-political correctness.
Are you a gamer?
A what?
A gamer?
Actually, I was addicted to video games until about 2010, where I started the Agent of Doubt channel and I stopped playing World of Warcraft and EverQuest 2, and I haven't looked back. I have a couple games on my phone, like Boom Beach and Clash of Clans, and two different Bubble Pop games, and that's it. Uh, my favorite game, I think, uh, of all of those MMO games that I used to love so much, Planet Side, which was a mix between a first person shooter and MMO game where you could talk to people, and there were thousands of people playing on the same map, so you could shoot people and come, and you would still respawn, but uh, people were trying to take over whole maps, and then they would move to the next map and try to take over that map. And there were three different factions, so the war kept going no matter what. You're winning on one front and you're losing on another, and whatever way that you want to fight, do you want to fight the losing battle or do you want to fight the winning battle? You know, you could just go wherever. I really liked that game. Planet Side 2 came out and my computer couldn't handle it, and I felt like there were too many people who had programs that would just make their avatar shoot flawlessly, and they could walk through the world, and they seemed to be blinking through the world to me, and I just felt like I was at a disadvantage with technology. So I didn't pick up that game either. Even though I liked the first one so much, the second game, I tried it for free for a day, and I felt like I was completely outclassed. Like maybe some people were playing Unreal Tournament for like a decade, and then they moved into that game. Mechanics are the same, and I was fodder. I was no good at it. But yeah, I feel like YouTube actually replaced gaming for me, because I used to make appointments for gaming, like telling everyone, okay, Friday at 7, we're going to be beating this boss. So we're going to have a raid. So I need you, you, and you, and you to plan for Friday at 7, you know? And that kind of planning is something that I don't want to do in video games anymore. Um, I feel like real life takes precedence over that kind of planning. And if somebody asks you, hey, I'm going to this party Friday at 7, do you want to go? And you tell them, no, I have a raid. That's, that's the game getting in the way of your real life. And I did that for too long. And the second reason I think that YouTube has completely replaced gaming for me was in World of Warcraft. Every time they put out an expansion, they would raise the level cap like 5 levels. And so, whatever epic gear that you had on for your character, you took one step into that next expansion and kill like a little slug or a rat on the ground, and out would pop this piece of gear that was like just one level higher, but it was completely like 10 times better than the gear that you had on. Right? So, like, you had to spend months and months getting, like, every week you would get like one little piece of gear for your character from beating all these raid bosses and having to like do rock paper scissors and roll for who gets to get the piece of equipment. And it took so long to get each piece. And then you take one step into this new world and they've completely devalued every bit of work that you've done. So the only joy that you get is temporary. You get the temporary feeling of, yay, I beat that boss character, I beat that giant monster. And so you get to feel good for a couple hours. And then however long that gear that dropped off that character lasts for you, you get that feeling, of accomplishment. But on YouTube, I've made videos 6 years ago that I still get comments on, And so the payout for those videos is over and over and over again. People watch the same video and they'll comment, and I can go back to that thing that I did 6 years ago that still pays out for me. Whereas anything that I did in World of Warcraft would not, 6 years ago, would not be worth anything now. And I feel that's part of the draw of the game. That's part of the way that they keep people addicted, is by moving the goalpost of what is the uber tricked out character. They just, once they see that too many people have top level characters with all the gear, they'll make another expansion and toss it out there and make everyone buy that $50 box and pay the monthly subscription fee, for another year, where people are trying to trick out their characters again. But then they're just going to devalue it all again in the end. YouTube is nowhere near as frustrating in that respect. I get payout from people viewing my videos years after I did them, and I love that.
Yeah, that's why I quit playing games myself. The games, they're fun. In my opinion, they're fun until you reach level 60. There seems to be mini games, like Neverwinter or Rift. It's fun, but once when you reach level 60, you may as well just quit and play another game. Reach level 60, play another game, because once level 60 hits, that's the time where you have to get like the purple gear or the orange gear, and then they would, once they see that everybody gets the purple gear or the orange gear, they're gonna move it to like level 65. Then you had to get that purple gear or the orange gear, and all of that. But people can be so annoying. They're like, "Did you just click need? Greed only. Greed only. Everybody click only greed. How dare you click that you need the item?" So it's kind of like, it gets annoying, especially since that gear could be perfect for your character.
Uh-huh.
And not only that, but that person can't even use the gear. That's the problem with Neverwinter, is that people get so mad that you click that you need a gear, but when it comes to the gear, they can't use it at all. The only thing they can do with it is sell it for astral diamonds. So that was annoying.
Yeah, and sometimes there are pieces of gear that you can't trade once you pick them up. And that's one of the ways that they make that scarcity keep you playing is they'll say, okay, for this kind of loot, as soon as you pick it up, your name is on it and you can't trade it at all. And that's what they did in EverQuest 2. Um, and yeah, I I feel like I can attribute 50 pounds on my body to all of the sedentary lifestyle that I had while I was playing video games instead of living life. And I drank many Mountain Dews and ate many Cheetos. And I'm still trying to uh, negate all those effects. And yeah, I do consider myself a former video game addict. I used to play no matter what 24/7 on EverQuest 2. When I was going to work, I would set my character up with a script where it would click on the screen and it would make arrows all day. Arrows was my biggest commodity that I would make. And basically, I would put all the components in my backpack, go set my character to what I called set it and forget it, just like a commercial that was really popular then. I would use a third-party program to keep clicking my mouse in a certain pattern to make arrows while I was at work. And then when I went to school, I would also set my character to play while I wasn't there because I didn't feel like I felt like I was losing time in the game if I wasn't playing all the time. So even when I wasn't able to play the game, I had set my character on autopilot, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And that's a level of addiction that most people don't get to.
there's sometimes the people you're in a guild with, they could be really bad. Like there's a guild I was in, and the leader, she told a woman who was a school teacher, she had to go to a teachers conference, and she just the guild leader was really mad that the school teacher had to go to the teachers conference, accused her of not being loyal enough to the guild. It's like, well, I probably can't promote you because you're not being dedicated enough to go on a raid with us. And the school teacher was like, well, tell that to my boss. And the guild leader was, oh, my bad.
Wow.
Yes, some people get mad if you don't prioritize their guild above everything else. Anyway, are you an avid reader?
Yes. And I do read less than I used to because I got, uh, well, I double majored and one of my majors was English. And so I had to read quite a bit for that. But most of what I read is on the internet nowadays. I use different RSS feeds to bring me blog posts from people. Um, yeah, I read a lot. I figure, well, when I was going to college, I wanted to learn something that would help me no matter where technology went. And you always have to be able to read the manual in order to understand how something works. And so that's why I majored in English and psychology because I felt like they were more base skills that could help you out no matter where technology went. Because um, people going into college right now think that they're going to get one job, and by the time they get out of college, that job doesn't exist anymore because technology has passed them by. And so Um, yeah, reading is fundamental. Um, I do have a library of books behind me if I turn my camera on, but that's not even all the books that are in the house that I've read.
Oh, you read all those books that are behind you. You read each and every single last one of them.
Yes, all of those. There's a whole nother room downstairs that has a wall full of books where half of the shelves are mine and half of them are Misty's. So I've read at least half of them and some of those that she owns as well. Got a library card. Yeah, I'd say most of what I read is on the internet nowadays. Playing MMO games, I also built some typing skills where I type pretty quickly as well, given and get from the internet a lot. Um, I also have other hobbies other than reading. Like I like to paint, and I never wanted to be a book reviewer. Uh, there are a couple of YouTube channels that I'm subscribed to where they review the books that they read, and I'm not a fan of spoilers. In fact, I hardly ever watch a movie twice because if I know what's coming, I'm just not as interested. So that's why I read so much. So I just don't like spoilers. I don't like rehashing over the same stuff.
Yeah, I've thought about reviewing a book before, but I decided against it. Anyway, what books would you recommend to your audience?
Um, if you are like me, not happy with SJWs in the way that they seem entitled, and there's just a gut feeling that just doesn't sit right with you. One of my favorite books would be Seize the Day by Saul Bellow. And in his time, Saul Bellow was a very famous author, but not anymore. But Seize the Day it's a very quick read. You can get through it in a day. But if you look at the main character, it's basically everything that SJWs embody as far as the entitlements and the never looking at yourself as being the problem and always thinking that it's the world that is out to get you. And that's why I like that book so much. It's basically he made a caricature of the worst of human qualities and put them all in one person. And it does annoy you to read it. You know, it's cringe-worthy what goes on in that book, but it's still very enlightening, because you feel like, oh yeah, I know somebody who does that, and I know somebody who does that. I probably have all the books from all of the um, big names in atheism, and I really haven't liked most of them. Uh,
Really, like Richard Dawkins or
well, when I read the God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, I had already been a YouTuber for years, and every argument that he put forth in there, I had already seen a YouTuber make. To me, the God Delusion is like atheism 101. You know, and I've heard everything in that book so many times because he's really a science popularizer. Just like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He didn't go too in depth with that book because it wasn't meant to be a very high level of reading. I feel like it was really meant for the audience that weren't atheists to try to convert them, and so he made an introductory book as to what atheists are all about. So for an atheist who's been in the community for years, I would never recommend that book. Because it's just stuff that you've already heard before.
Yes, many religious or well, even the atheist people are doing it now. But when it comes to religious books that I've read, it's just things that you can find on the internet for free. Pretty much, many of the religious books that I've read different religions across the board, but it's like you can find the exact same thing on a web forum for free just by listening to or talking to the members. And it's like, why did I spend this money on this book when I already know everything about this religion, you know, that and more just from reading forums and talking to people of that religion. It seems like a waste of money.
Of all of the top atheist um, authors, I feel like when Christopher Hitchens put out The Portable Atheist, I enjoyed that book a lot more because he didn't write it. It's more an anthology of different atheist writers and through history. And I felt like I learned so much more about the subject of atheism in that book than all of the other books because it was more like a history lesson, like the history of atheism. It was more in depth.
So there weren't all that many atheist books that you liked, or many atheist authors that you liked or were a fan of.
No, I feel like you can get most of their content, just like you said, in web forums, and I felt like at a certain point in my real life, I fell out of atheist activism, even though I still support it when I see it. There were too many people who it was a case of too many chiefs, not enough Indians. And if they were to call me up again and say, "Hey, we need your truck and trailer to put a float in the parade that says, 'Hey, atheism is great,'" I'd be right there for it. But bickering over who has what position in what group, and then splitting off and creating your own group because you can't be the president of another group, and seeing all of this proliferation of people who have a willingness to promote themselves rather than promote the actual agenda of you know showing atheism to be an okay thing. I just don't like that anymore. And so the atheist activism that I see the most, I see conferences that have a lot of atheists who are also social justice warriors who show up at every conference in every state. It's like they're on a book selling tour where they if one of them gets in, they call up all their friends and they all converge on that conference, and they're very cliquish about it. And so you won't see the Amazing Atheist or Thunderfoot at one of these conventions because they're not with the social justice aspect that these people adhere to. So they might be atheists, but they are a different breed of atheist. And I don't feel like they represent me at all. And I'm very much not atheism pluser. Whereas I feel like even though Atheism Plus lost its allure, a lot of the atheist speaking tour members still want for something like that. They want for social justice added to atheism. And that's why I stopped being so fond of authors in the atheist community, because the entire speaking tour, like every convention seems so homogenous. It's the same social justice warriors over and over again. And I'm just tired of it.
Are you an animal lover?
I do love animals. I have there's two animals in my house. I moved in with my girlfriend. She had two dogs, and one is a rescued pit bull, and his name is Clyde. And I trained him to sick nuts with a laser pointer. That's in one of my videos. And I am going to train him to sick nuts on effigies of Aldous Valor. He's very good at catching anything, as far as balls or frisbees or food. His mouth is like a catcher's mitt. Sugar is our border collie, and she's a very mean dog. Clyde the pit bull is the nice one. And Sugar, she recently bit Misty on the hand during a dog fight, and Misty is still in like physical therapy over one of her fingers that won't bend all the way because of that bite. So we've had little struggles here and there, but yeah, I'm an animal lover. I like dogs better than cats, but I still like cats too.
Oh, I'm a cat lover. Cats are my favorite animals.
I like that cats are less maintenance, but I think dogs show more affection. I used to have a cat named Nipples.
Um,
Uh, we found Nipples. She was well endowed because it was obvious she just had a litter of kittens, and she was a stray, and we never found the litter of kittens. But we we kept Nipples for years.
do you do you wish more Americans were interested in politics?
Uh, yes. In fact, I used to have a voter registration drive where I would go into high schools and teach high schoolers how to register to vote. Um, I felt like it was a good thing to do, but I feel like most of the voter registration drives that are out there now are partisan, and they're all connected to a political party because they've turned it into a job where somebody's actually making money for registering people rather than people volunteering to do it. So I don't do that anymore because it's already there's already so many opportunities for people to register to vote. I just don't see the point anymore. But as far as politically active, yes, I do wish more people were. I wish voter turnout was mandatory. I wish there were laws that said if you don't go vote on a certain day, then a police officer could show up at your house and say, hey, sign this piece of paper that says that you actually didn't want to vote, or fill out this ballot now. I do wish that we had 100% participation, even if the only participation you did was to opt out. I want everyone to have the opportunity to vote. And I know that that's a more authoritarian stance that I wish we had enforced voting. But, I wish that we could all, instead of having primaries or states with electoral colleges, I wish we all just logged onto a website, put in our password, and then voted, and then had some accountability where we could go check that website and say, hey, tell me how I voted to see if my vote's been manipulated, and then get a printout of how you voted. And I wish that that sort of system was tied to your tax return just as much as the Affordable Health Care Act makes it mandatory that you get health insurance, or else you're going to get a tax penalty. If you didn't vote, pay 1% more in taxes. That'll make people vote, you know? Even if all you do when you vote is to say, I don't like anyone and I just want to spoil this ballot, I at least want everyone to be sitting in front of a computer screen making that decision every time we have an election. Because there are so many ways to disenfranchise people. There are so many ways to make people sit at home and not want to vote. And I think that it would completely change the political landscape if everyone who was dissuaded from voting was forced to actually tell us what is going on in your mind. Why are you not voting? Is there a third party candidate that you would want to support? Because maybe all of the third party candidate voters are sitting at home doing nothing because they don't think that they can win. And if we force them to vote, maybe we would end up with a third party candidate winner. You know, there's all sorts of psychological games that get played on the American people in order to keep them from wanting to vote. And I feel like finding out what that majority of people that don't vote actually have in their minds is an important thing that we need to get to. So I would have like mandatory participation. There are countries that have mandatory participation in their military, where everyone has to serve 2 years. You know, I'm not calling for anything as drastic as that. You know, where everyone learns nationalism through service to their country. But I feel like requiring people to spend 5 minutes of every 4 years or every 2 years is not too much to ask. You know, I feel like people's civic responsibilities are shirked by a lot of people because they're just pressured by the political landscape into not wanting to do anything.
That sounds very authoritarian to me. Because to
I
me,
know.
voting is still a form of freedom of speech. You're saying that you don't like either candidates equally, not to vote for either of them. And unfortunately, we have a two-party system. We mostly have Republican or Democrat. If you try to vote Libertarian, you're basically throwing a votes away. Not like that, but I don't even know how to even get a Libertarian ballot.
Well, my stance is authoritarian up to the point where once the ballot is placed in front of someone, I would have an option that says I don't want to vote. Period. And that would be a valid choice on the ballot. But at least we would know that that person was making that decision and didn't have problems like, oh, well, I can't find a babysitter. Oh, my job made me work a double shift that day because they knew what political affiliation I had. Oh, you know, the choices were so bad that I just didn't feel like even getting up off my couch. I want everyone to log onto a computer and at least check a box that says I don't want to vote, and then put in their password and hit enter and be done with it for 2 years until the next 5 minutes where the country bugs you to know what do you want. You know, that's what I want. It's only authoritative up to bugging someone for logging into a website every 2 years.
Yeah, because you also said that if you don't vote, then we should penalize you with having like make you pay 1% more in taxes. It just seems authoritarian because to me, not voting is still part of freedom of speech. You're still saying you hate both candidates equally, and you don't want either candidate to represent you.
Well, it's a simple like you can check the I don't want to vote box and still get your 1% back under the plan that I just uh, proposed there. But if you don't vote, there's no telling how many tax hikes that you could get if you don't vote, because you're going to let everyone else decide what we're going to spend money on as a country. So you're already telling the country, okay, tax me however you want, and I'm not going to tell you how to represent me at all. I'm giving up my representation if you don't vote. So adding another 1% to it is only an incentive. It's only a nominal thing to make people say, you know what, I'm at least motivated by money. So I'm going to take my 1%. I'm going to go log onto that website real quick and say I don't want to vote just to get my 1% back. I feel like that would be at least the smallest invasion that we could put on people and still get everyone to participate. Because what we have now is, let's say if you're an anti-corporatist, right? There's large corporations that spend millions of dollars to make you think that your vote doesn't count because they want you to sit at home. And if they don't want stay-at-home moms to vote, they will put their ads on soap operas during the day so that they can target those women. There are people, there are billboards on certain corridors where everyone on that interstate has a job and they're commuting. So they're targeting those people to think that their vote doesn't count. And that their only decision that they could possibly make is between the two major candidates, and making them feel like they can't participate in a meaningful way. And I would like to see a world where everyone's voice was taken into consideration, and then the politics molded after that. What we have now in our primary system is some states that happened before others shape the politics of the others that have primaries after them. And those states are nowhere near reflective of a cross-section of America. Who the fuck cares what people in Iowa think? I want to see what Californians think, and we're not going to know that until next Tuesday. California is much more indicative of what the rest of the makeup of the country is than Iowa, which is white bread, which is largely rural. And so when candidates go there, they change their rhetoric to appeal to Iowans rather than appealing to the entire country. I'd love to see the entire primary system and the entire electoral college system scrapped for a direct accounting of what everyone feels, and have nobody feel like, oh, well, since Donald Trump already beat out Ted Cruz, say, in the Republican Party, there's no reason for me to vote in California in the California primary if I'm a Republican anymore, right? Fuck that. Californians should have had a say in that. And I'm not saying that they would have changed the vote at all. I'm not saying that they would have changed the outcome, but you have millions of people who now feel like, oh, well, my vote doesn't matter. Trump's going to be the one who represents us, and love him or leave him, he's there now because we didn't have any part in the decision. That sucks, and we can change that. We have it within our power to create a technology that everyone could log into, use their password, and then to prevent voter fraud, they could log into that same website and check their vote to see if their vote was manipulated. We don't even have that these days. Once you put those marks on that ballot, which is completely anonymized, you have no idea what happens to that ballot. I'm advocating for a system where you can log in and see exactly how you voted through the years, right? You have the opportunity to check the system your damn self.
Yeah, I do see what you're saying in a sense, but I don't want to be like North Korea. It seems that there's a slippery slope with your idea where we could be like North Korea, but at the exact same time, when I looked into people's votes, there are many people in the Democratic side who hates Hillary Clinton but voted for her because she's already ahead. And there are many people who are Republicans who hates Donald Trump, who would rather see Ted Cruz win, but they vote for Donald Trump anyway because he's ahead. And they're like, well, he's ahead anyway, so me as well. They just feel like they vote for him because he's already ahead in the polls. And to me, I do think it would be a lot better if everybody could just go online and do the primaries all at the exact same time through the internet, then to see that Donald Trump is far ahead, you know, over all the other Republicans. So they feel like their votes doesn't really matter. And they feel like may as well vote for Trump, even though I don't like him because it's ahead anyway. So my votes really doesn't count.
I'm with you. The system needs to be changed so that the psychological effect of somebody already having the lead does not sway your vote. I want to know what you as a person wants, not you as a person who is very aware that there are large groups of people who feel this way, and if you align with them, then you might get half of what you want. I want to know what you want because I feel like there are a lot of interests out there that are being pushed to the side because we have this dichotomy, this two party system that arises whenever we have systems like the one we have. We need to readdress what it means to represent Americans. And it was the best system at the time when the Constitution was written to have representatives, to have an electoral college, to have these things because it was impossible to connect with people on a personal level en masse. But guess what? Now we have computers. Now we have the ability to talk to people with a telephone. Now we have the ability to really find out what people want instead of a very corruptible system that is so corrupt that everyone knows it's corrupt and they still just nominally participate in it.
Yeah, yeah, it really bothers me because I went to salon and you would not believe how many people in salon who really hates Hillary Clinton but felt like they have no other choice but to vote for her anyway just to defeat Trump. They hate Hillary Clinton. I mean, I've even on Twitter and different Democratic websites, where many people hate Hillary Clinton. They don't like her, but they voted for her, even though they don't like her, but they just want to beat Trump. And they feel like Hillary only had the real chance of winning, even though they would rather have Bernie Sanders or they would probably have somebody else. And again, like same thing with the Republicans. I've seen so many Republicans like, I really hate Trump. I really don't want Trump to win. They were pro Marco Rubio or they're pro Ted Cruz. They see like from Iowa or whatever, the first few states they get it, and they see that Trump is way ahead, and they figure, well, I may as well vote for Trump because I mean I don't like the guy, but I may as well vote for him because we need to defeat Hillary.
Well, sometimes what people want is not pragmatically possible. And one of the platforms of Bernie Sanders is campaign finance reform in a real way. And one of the problems with that is that it ties uh, candidates who are in favor of campaign finance reform to living under those rules that they wanted for themselves. And one of the things that is the reason why I am voting for Hillary Clinton is she's found a way to get around campaign finance reform that the Republicans are not using. And in that way, she has empowered herself to be able to change not just who the president is, but to be able to help all of the little guys who, we have a Republican Congress basically, right? They have the majority. In order to help all of those um, other candidates in all the smaller places, what she's going to do is help them raise campaign funds. Okay. And she has the best fundraising machine possible. And one of the things that she's exploiting right now is McCutcheon versus FEC, which was a 2014 ruling. And not a lot of people know about this, but basically the Hillary Fund is set up in 33 different states that would play ball with her. And the Hillary Fund is basically McCutcheon versus FEC said that, yes, everyone has a personal $10,000 how much they can give to a candidate, but that cap is only good for each state. So if each state has say a Montana Hillary Victory Fund and a Louisiana Hillary Victory Fund, a billionaire can give to each one of those states' funds. And there are 33 different states that decided that that would be okay for Hillary Clinton to do. And so every billionaire that she knows that's giving her money can give her $330,000 to her campaign directly. No other candidate has been using this type of machine. The Republicans don't have anything like it, and none of the rest of the Democrats do. But as soon as all of those superdelegates vote for her in the primaries to become the nominee for the Democratic Party, she is going to use that Hillary Victory Fund methodology to make all of those billionaires give to each of those superdelegates who hold political office the same amount of money that she was able to get out of them, right? And in that way, she outraised funds on Bernie Sanders time and again, because Bernie Sanders doesn't have any billionaire friends. He only has friends that have $10 in their pocket and a dream. What we need, even though Hillary does not stand with me on probably a third of the issues, she's not progressive enough for me. And I probably would like Bernie Sanders' platform on those issues better. We need somebody who can crush the Republicans with funds, with fundraising. Okay. And she's willing to do that. She's willing to go get those funds that is required to fight an uphill battle. And that uphill battle is incumbency has a psychological effect on people where whoever's already in office, people just tend to vote for them instead of actually looking at what is best for them. And when you have a Republican controlled Congress, both the House and the Senate, if you want some of those ousted, you have to fight incumbency. And how do you do that? Well, you got to raise more campaign funds than them to put a way better ad campaign together to get yourself in front of people and be able to tell them why they should vote for you. Right? Incumbent candidates naturally have a better ability to raise campaign finances too. So she's fighting the uphill battle against that as well. She's also fighting gerrymandering, where the districts have been redrawn to dilute the Democrats' votes because a city will have its center have the border of like 10 different districts because they're cutting up the city to put a majority of rural people with a slice of the city in order to gerrymander the district so a Republican will always win that district. That's what she's fighting. And those corrupt things are something that you need a lot of money to fight. And that's why I'm on board with her, because I want all of those individual state Senate, U.S. Senate, state representative, U.S. representative fights. I want them all to be won by people who are progressive. And I don't want theocrats. Right now, we have a Congress where if a theocrat like Ted Cruz were to have won, I would have just been face palming every day, because the shit that he could get passed through would have been mind-numbingly stupid. I'm talking about Texas textbooks for everyone where evolution is written out of it. You know, that's how fucking stupid our country could get. And those are the stakes. So the fact that Bernie Sanders is an independent who did not make friends with most of the Democrats in the Democratic Party, for the longest time stayed an independent to set himself apart from all of those Democrats. You know, the fact that he has no big money backers and does not want to make friends with them at all, and just wants to do grassroots campaigns, which are going to have a hard time raising funds, to me says, yeah, it would be great to have somebody reflect those principles. But one of those principles is, I'm going to go ahead and stack the deck against myself so I can't win. And I'm going to, just say, oh, well, at least we fought the good fight in not allowing corporate money into our campaign finances, but then lose. And the cost of losing is just too fucking much for me. So that's why I'm backing Hillary, is because she has the party's good in her intentions. She has what's good for the party. She's going to raise money not just for herself, but for all the rest of the Democrats that are with her on this. All of those superdelegates that are going to vote for her in the primary. It's more of a team effort there. And that's what I think that a lot of Bernie supporters don't see, is that Bernie is on Team Bernie. Okay? Elizabeth Warren kind of matches his politics, but is Bernie going to be working with the other Democrats in order to help them get elected on the local level? No. That's Hillary Clinton doing all that work. And what we need is change at all levels of government, as well as grassroots activism, but all levels of government. And just getting the presidency is not enough. We've seen with Barack Obama what happens with an obstructionist government that won't let even his appointees to the Supreme Court get even mentioned on the floor. Nothing's getting done, because if they can't have their way, they're going to make sure that nobody gets anything done. What Hillary's doing is making sure that we can make a change in that. Right? And you might not like her past of flip-flopping or changing her position with polls, right? But at least we have a chance of changing all levels of government if we get her in. If we got Bernie Sanders in, what you would see is an entrenching of all of the local level Republicans who have gerrymandered districts, who have the incumbency behind them, and we would basically see 4 to 8 years of nothing getting done.
I disagree with you on this point because for me, I find Hillary Clinton to be very Machiavellian and to only care about her own self interest. Vernaculus and Sargon of Akkad did videos on her on how manipulative she could be. She's not somebody I trust. And even the Amazing Gideons, not only the Amazing Gideons, but even even Senior Mini Bagel says that if you look at her political compass, she's much more to like I believe it's the authoritarian right. And like they looked at her track record and she was more pro war than any Republican out there. I think she voted in favor of every single war. Hillary just seems to only really care about Hillary Clinton.
Well, I don't see about how voting for wars is Hillary caring about Hillary. To me, that's non sequitur-ish, but I agree with that she is Machiavellian. Okay. I agree that she is looking out for her. And one of the things that she would not want is to have that same obstructionist Congress in place while she was a president. She would not want to look more like a lame duck than President Obama. And my evidence to the fact that she's not just in it for herself, because in order for herself to shine, she has to help others. All of the superdelegates that before the primaries even started came out and supported her were actually approached by her with this plan of the Hillary Victory Fund. She's not just in it to win just the presidency for herself. She wants every one of those superdelegates to win in their districts to make sure that when she's president, there's a Congress that's favorable to her. And so her being in it for herself and also being in it for other people are not mutually exclusive. Okay? She has to have those people in place at all levels of government in order to get anything done herself, because she does not want to be a continuation of Barack Obama's having to deal with an obstructionist Congress.
I just can't bring myself to trust the Machiavellian. I mean, all she proved to me is that she can't really be trusted.
Well, I would say that if you can see through her veil, as far as not being able to trust her, but there are other politicians that you do trust, I would say that those politicians are just more successful at being Machiavellian, because that's politics. You know, there are things that Bernie Sanders does that are also underhanded, but the things that Hillary Clinton has done are far more apparent and present and talked about more. And she has a lot more history of having the limelight on her exposing these things. But to say that any candidate or any person who's a politician in office is an angel, I would say take a second look at that person. In fact, both of us are probably completely against the social justice narrative and spreading, say, safe space laws onto the rest of the internet and the world. But which candidate in this race right now reflects social justice values the best? Bernie Sanders. He is the Occupy candidate. He is the person who would never speak against social justice warriors in any speech that he ever makes, because he knows that that's his base. Right?
When it comes to Hillary Clinton, she came out as a feminist, and feminists are against things like manspreading, mansplaining. Right now, I am far more worried about the regressive left than I am with the theocratic right, because I mean, I remember seeing a video where a person in Australia who's in a really high position was using the words like mansplaining, like, oh yeah, nice of you to mansplain to me. We're seeing over and over again, like in England, we're seeing people laughing at men's rights issues. Right now, the regressive left is a huge problem. I have a right now, I think that the left is a bigger problem than rights at this point in time.
And who do you think is worse as far as being a regressive left person, Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, but you're forgetting that it's going to be Hillary versus Donald Trump in the end. And right now,
Yeah,
I'm leaning towards Trump because mainly because of how Machiavellian Hillary Clinton could be. Not only that, but Trump is stupid with his lies. It's easier for people to tell when he's lying than she's lying. Not only that, but I mean, if I'm thinking about man spreading, ban mansplaining, who's more likely to do that, Hillary or Donald? No.
well, yeah. When it's or Donald, I can see your point there. And as far as the Republican race, I was just relieved when Ted Cruz had to drop out because I considered him a theocrat. And Donald Trump, I actually don't know much about him because his policies are not that upfront. And when I went to his website to learn about some of his policies, the border wall thing was there, the anti-immigration thing was there, and those are things that I am not for. I like a more globalist and border-free world. I personally have suffered as far as immigration restrictions on my family, and so um, when Donald says that he's going to put more scrutiny on Muslims entering the country or Muslims in general, and these are things that are on his website. Um, some of those things to me are anti-civil rights as far as the equality for everyone. If you're going to put this kind of scrutiny on one type of people, you need to do it for everyone. You know, anyone who could possibly be a terrorist, and not just have that sort of bigotry. And I feel like I can't even understand how the bigoted things that Trump has said have not tanked his campaign. I'm like, I must be out of touch with all of America because I cannot, for the life of me, explain how he made it to the top, how he beat out all of those other candidates. I especially liked Marco Rubio's final week before he dropped out of the race of everything he was saying about Trump. I was like, why isn't Rubio uh, rising in the polls? Why? You know, I don't get it. Um, but for me, it was enough that Ted Cruz was beaten out. Uh, 4 years ago, I decided that as a delegate in the Republican Party, I was against Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry, and Rick Santorum. And as long as those three were eliminated from the possibility of becoming president, I was going to be happy, you know? And sometimes politics comes down to just getting the worst of the worst off of the possibilities, off the table, because I could live under Trump as president, and I could live under Hillary Clinton as president. I could probably live under Bernie Sanders as president. It would be a little bit harder. Um, there's a lot of theocrats out there that I would not want in the Oval Office, especially with a Republican Congress backing them. That's just that would be a lot of good fuel for my videos, though. and a lot of good material for comedians, but not very good for the people.
Yeah, I also don't like how Rubio didn't get her hand. I think they helped with all those years of Celebrity Apprentice and Apprentice. I think that he just had a bigger fan base than expected, and that people just really love The Apprentice. People love these Celebrity Apprentice, and his fan base has got his back, and his fan base is going to vote for him. So I think people are just underestimating the fan base that he already had.
I think that if we didn't have a restriction on who could be president to only natural born citizens, um, we could probably have Arnold Schwarzenegger as our president this year. Seriously, because he has a bigger fan base, and that's. I wish that people were more in America and were more politically active, but at the same time, that is the common denominator that is in America. We would vote for a movie star before we would vote for somebody who actually has stances on issues.
Can you imagine if Leonardo DiCaprio ran for president? How many people would vote for him just for the fact that he's a celebrity?
I would make up a bumper sticker that said Leonardo DiCaprio. Uh,
I would think that if Leonardo DiCaprio were to run for president, many of his hardcore fan base or any celebrity who still has a really big name who is like old enough to run for president, I would think that their fan base would just be like, woo, we'll totally vote for them. Like, can you imagine like if or Justin Justin Timberlake for the run for president. How many of his members were like, "Oh, I'm gonna vote for Justin! Yay! I love Justin so much. I'm gonna vote for him for president." People are so fanatical with their celebrities that they would vote for, whomever is their favorite celebrity long before they care about the issues, because I mean, even Donald Trump flip flopped a lot, but do you think his fans care about his flip flopping? No, they don't. They just care about voting for Donald Trump, no matter which way the wind blows.
I feel like a lot of the people that I know are actually voting for Hillary Clinton for the same reasons, though, because they know of her because of her husband's presidency, and some of them are hoping for a return of the financial state that the country was in when Bill Clinton was in office. And that's one of those things that I just can't understand why people, the president that was there at the time, with the financial state of the country. Because, for one, it could be the policies of previous presidents that created all that financial gain. Like, I would say Ronald Reagan and all the policies that he put in place were probably more responsible for the boom of money that we had in the 90s than Bill Clinton was when he was president in the 90s. And also, presidents don't really affect the economy as much as people think. Because during Bill Clinton's time in office, there was a tech boom. And the internet bubble happened where people were investing in all sorts of technology and new things were coming out. And that was largely the driving factor behind all of those gains in the economy. And that had nothing to do with him. It's not like Al Gore actually invented the internet, and people still associate all of those good times financially with his presidency. And I feel like there's a lot of people who would just like to see Hillary come back because they want to see a good economy. her being in office might not equate to having a good economy, you know, because each era, each decade, each year is its own thing with its own outside variables that the president has nothing to do with.
Yeah, for me, I just don't want to see a feminist or a social justice president because to me, we're already getting far to the left with ban mansplaining, ban manspreading, ban man hogging, and ban whatever thing they want to add man to.
I also feel like I've seen a selective application of law about freedom of speech. I personally was embedded with Occupy protesters on my YouTube channel, was just posting videos that I filmed in Occupy Colorado Springs and Occupy Denver, right? And the police response that I saw to their freedom of speech was horrifying, you know? And I see the same thing with campuses and the deplatforming of, say, Milo or anyone else who tries to go from campus to campus. The police will be right there to basically let the deplatforming happen. And then if it's a if the shoe is on the other foot, you know, if the roles are reversed, those police would take the demonstrators that are MRAs, the demonstrators that are anti-social justice, and evict them from the campus. There is no sense of equality in this freedom of speech, and it all depends on what environment you're in, as far as how much you're going to be deplatformed. And originally, that was one of the draws that I had to YouTube, and I feel like Google has been better than other companies at keeping that environment where we have freedom of speech. And I know that a lot of social justice warriors will say that the comment section on YouTube is a cesspool. But to me, that cesspool is where I thrive. I love that cesspool. I love that everyone can state whatever idea that they have, you know, and the opposite of that is Twitter, where people are getting shadow banned, where people are getting suspensions for having political thoughts. And that's not right. And all you have to do is look at the Twitter Trust and Safety Council and look at who comprises the members to know where they're headed. And that's a direction that I don't want to see YouTube and Google head. And so far, they haven't.
Okay, and how do you feel about Barack Obama's presidency?
I feel like universal health care is an inevitability. It's not something that we can avoid. And I feel like the Affordable Care Act is the crown jewel to the Barack Obama presidency, and that it's one step in that direction. I still like capitalism. Universal health care would affect my pocketbook greatly as a psychotherapist. So I'm not in favor of my own pocketbook being hurt by changes in healthcare. But I feel like that was an achievement. There was actually like a list of like 50 different achievements of Barack Obama on the White House website. And I feel like all of them are they're accurate, that they're things that happened. But the one thing that I wanted when I saw Hope and Change in 2008, you know, when I saw those slogans, what I wanted was a better economy. I wanted an economy where I could thrive. And what I found was, personally, I had some very hard times from 2010 to 2013. I was very, very poor. I was on uh, unemployment assistance for much of that time. And I kept looking for jobs that just, every job I found, they were wanting to offer me a low ball figure to work that job, to the point where I would basically be paying to work versus the unemployment insurance that I was on. I would take a cut in pay just for the notoriety of working rather than just take the unemployment, you know, and that sucks. And I wanted for a better economy, and I didn't see it happen. And I realized that Barack Obama couldn't just wave a wand and make that happen. There are forces outside of his control. And I feel like um, what he did with the Affordable Care Act was a good step, and that it's going to help us like incrementally head towards a future where not everyone is going to be able to participate in the economy as much. Um, I know this is probably a very liberal progressive thing, but I actually do believe in a basic living allowance that other countries have when people can't find a job, because I do believe that just manufacturing and technology are getting so good at getting rid of the need for human beings that we're just going to produce so much goods with far fewer people, that people won't have the jobs to be able to participate in the economy. And that being what it is, we're going to have a lot of people who are on public assistance. And a lot of things are just going to work themselves out in that respect. But I really think that it's more of an inevitability than it is any sort of political stance that you can have. We are, like, every country will head to being a very evolved, very educated, and very socialist country. And the fight is, how hard is it going to be getting there? How painful is it going to be when we get there? I'm hoping that we just have little small baby steps. Massive shortages or famine or anything else that get us there. But I hope that when we do get there, it's kind of like Star Trek with the replicators. Nobody ever saw any money changing hands on Star Trek. Nobody ever, paid any money into the replicator. They just got what they wanted. And, with the ability to create things and not need people to work that job, I just see a whole bunch of people not having the ability to get a job. And that's something the presidents cannot stand in the way of, because technology is what it is.
Yeah, I've seen that in stores nearby where people would get replaced with self checkout. Like, you don't really need as many
Absolutely.
anymore, because now people could check themselves out. So there's no need to have as many employees. You could just have, like, I don't know, 10 people working there. You know.
And that's one aspect of it. Another is, when I was an electrician working in refineries, I was wiring up valves that were blocks away from a central control unit, where one person with a computer was controlling valves electronically, rather than what it used to be, where somebody actually had to go out and turn the valve manually. You know, you used to have a person for that, but now you don't. There are so many things that technology can just eliminate the need for people. When people go into the app on their phone for online banking, that eliminates the need for a receptionist or a teller. You know, there's so many self-help things that you can use on your phone with just apps. Um, when was the last time you had to dial 411 for information? You don't. You just look it up on the internet and find the number on Google, right? Um, the world is becoming more and more technologically advanced, but that eliminates jobs. Every technological advancement is just eliminating more and more jobs. And what do you do with people's productive capacity when it's not needed? You know, there's people that have the willingness to work and they have skills that they could use, but there's no call for them because technology has replaced them. What do you do with those people? What kind of society are we going to become when it's just a few corporations that are producing all the food and all the goods that we need? And if you don't work for them, then you're just going to have to be somebody who gets what they give you because they can outproduce anything.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from because it's it seems like there's little need for people these days, especially since where I'm from, all the places to work, where I'm from, they're closing down for real. Like pretty much, like Walmart is still successful, but they have self checkouts. But pretty much every store that I have nearby, it's hard to find work because every place where I'm from is closing.
The
Or like
internet
every place is closing. So
the internet has destroyed Blockbuster Video to where they're all closing because you can get Netflix. And
yeah,
Netflix and Hulu has taken away the job of the clerk at Blockbuster Video. You see red boxes, which are basically vending machines for movies that used to be an entire Blockbuster store. You know, um, it's going to get to the. You know that McDonald's is actually putting automated menus on their tables now, so that you pick off the menu what you want, and then it gets made, and they call your name and whatnot. But the person who takes your order just lost his job right there. There are a couple prototype McDonald's that are completely automated. Um, yeah, I think that there's nothing that Barack Obama could have done to stop that. But in the meantime, at the level of technology that we're at, the Affordable Care Act helped me in that a lot of my clients have been forced onto getting the Medicaid benefits that they were entitled to anyway, but wouldn't have necessarily applied for because that incentive of if you don't get something as far as health insurance, you're going to be taxed more at the end of the year. That forced a lot of them to just go use the healthcare exchange and find themselves on Medicaid. Well, I can bill Medicaid. If somebody didn't have any health insurance, they wouldn't be seeking help for any of their problems, any of their medical problems. But now, if they get Medicaid, I can not only help them with counseling and the psychotherapy that we do at my job, but I can link them to other services that they might need. A lot of times a person's problems are actually physically debilitating, and it's nothing that I can actually counsel out of them. They've got a physical problem. I have a client that shows up in the middle of the throes of withdrawal, and they need a hospital, to monitor them more than they need me to counsel them to put the crack pipe down. so I can get them connected to that hospital if I know that they have healthcare insurance. And it's actually easy for me to hold someone's hand to apply for health insurance or Medicaid through that healthcare exchange, and in doing that, get them to the point where I can bill them. But it used to be that at least half of the prospective clients that I could possibly see would not have health insurance because they would not have set that up earlier. Now I can at least lead them in that right direction and get that care out there. And that's how the Affordable Care Act has helped me so far. The problem with that is the slippery slope of government intervention in healthcare means that at a certain point they're going to go single payer on all of healthcare, and they're going to start determining what wages I'm allowed to make, because all doctors and all nurses and all anyone in healthcare will have a set rate that they're going to be making and be able to bill for, and that's going to hurt me. And I see that in the future, probably 20 years down the road, where it's inevitable. But for now, I felt like the Affordable Care Act was a helpful step. It's a step in that direction, though.
Yeah, it does seem like we're just all getting replaced by machines, putting people out of work. So maybe we should just give people an allowance at certain points just so they could live.
Well, and my opinion on where that allowance should come from is not to tax individual people. As an anti-corporatist stance, I would tax windfall profits for one. If a corporation is making billions of dollars, billions upon billions, and they're not reinvesting in employing people, that is the kind of corporation that I would tax. Because I feel like corporations being not people, it is okay to discriminate against the corporation if they're doing something that is not good for our economy, right? But if they're doing something that's good for the economy, like if they actually are employing people and actually are paying out wages that stimulate the economy, then I would leave that company alone more than the companies that just take our profits and take them to other countries to put in foreign untraceable bank accounts.
Yeah, it does bother me when companies take their when people take their companies to like Mexico or Bangladesh or China because they know that they could work people for cheap. Like all of our jobs seems to be going to, China, Bangladesh, and all these other countries.
Well, the very big problem with that is when they change another country's economy to be the low cost producer of goods. Inevitably, um, that company will change that culture to the point where that group of people demands higher wages themselves. So wherever they go around the planet, will always be this effect of the more technology that they introduce to that community, the better skilled those employees will get and the more wages they will demand. And so they'll have to go look for somewhere else to move. And rather than fight it, I say go with the flow and just hope that one day the biggest cost for goods and services will be transportation. And so rather than worrying about how we're going to build things in China and ship them overseas, we'll see people more worried about now how do we make the thing locally so that there's the shortest distance between manufacturing it and the consumer. And I think that 3D printing is part of the answer to that, in that it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's going to be a machine that makes it no matter what. And it's going to come out as close to the consumer as possible, because, you know, if you don't have to ship it overseas, that's a cost that you don't have to incur.
Have you ever been a Christian?
I think that I've been an atheist since I was 7 years old. And in the way that some people say cultural Jew, I feel like I'm a cultural Christian. I have a lot of the values that the Christians around me have, but I did not believe in the existence of God from the age of 7.
Okay, is there anything you wish your audience knew about you?
Um, yes, in fact, I have a job where I have confidentiality issues in talking about it, and so I can't talk about the day-to-day grind of my job. And there are just amazing stories that I could be telling that I can't, because I have to worry about the confidentiality of my clients. And it's to the point where I'm not, by my job's rules, I'm not allowed to state who my employer is, right? I'm not allowed to talk about them. I'm not allowed to say that I have a certain number of clients at work. I'm not allowed to say anything about those clients. Um, the confidentiality of it is sometimes very choking to me. So when I talk about my job, I can talk about concepts and principles that I might use to change someone's mind about addiction, but I can't talk about stories that happened, you know, actual events. And so I wish I could tell my subscribers about all of these things that have happened in my life. Um, there was one kind of depressing month that I had a couple months ago where I was attacked at work. And I can't say anything about that. You know, one of those events happened to me. You know, none of the details can I let out at all because of confidentiality. And it sucks, because I feel like there's a lot of tacit knowledge that I could be sharing with the entire world, and it could help someone, especially other therapists, you know, but I'm not allowed to talk about it at all. Mum's the word. Also, there are parts of my life that I don't make public, because there are people on the internet that like to, in order to deplatform someone, that will try to ruin their life, such as when Thunderfoot had his job threatened by the letter writing campaign to his job, right? So that's another reason why I wouldn't want my employer to be known, is because somebody might write to my employer saying, "Oh, did you know he's an atheist? Oh, did you know he's not in line with all the social justice issues, and that he actually has this other position that might affect the way that he treats clients?" You know, there are people that do hate me enough, just from the 6 years I've been on YouTube, to actually want to mess with my life in that way. And I've had proof of this pop up from certain users that it makes me kind of paranoid about letting out certain information about my life. So, yeah, there are things that I'd love for my audience to know about me. I just can't say them.
Right, we're about to close. So, does anybody who's watching have any questions? Hmm. I wonder if there's anybody at all. Because right now we only have 2 viewers, so.
That could be you and me.
Yeah.
Well, at least we're watching.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe the two viewers are just you and me because nobody's talking on chats anymore. Any questions? Going once? Going twice? All right, we're done. Bye bye, everyone. Bye.
Laters.